mean, who doesn't remember the relationship of Rihanna, Miss Rihanna, our girl, right? And Chris Brown, Chris Breezy, right? The second most highest entertainer after Michael Jackson, right? There's Michael Jackson and there's Chris Breezy, right? So when it comes to the male entertainers, all right. And when we look at their history, wow, they've been through it, right? And they were together for not a whole long time, but the history that they have is as if they were together for years and decades even, right? Now, also looking at his relationship with Karrueche, right? Because Karrueche has always been in the picture, and so we need to see how he's dealing with, or how he dealt with these beautiful ladies. Let's get into the details, right? With that said, Rihanna is a Pisces ascendant, Chris Brown is a Cancer ascendant, right? So I know for the Westerners, according to the Westerners, Chris Brown is a Leo and Rihanna is a Aquarius, or I don't remember, but to make my predictions, which obviously turn out to be accurate all the time, is because I'm using the sidereal ascendant to do the predictions. I don't know Karrueche's birth time, but I don't need the birth time to do calculations, particularly to progressions. I don't need that, right? And so when I looked at their charts, we're gonna start with the relationship with Karrueche, because we don't have a whole lot of stuff to talk about, because their synastry is actually balanced. I say balanced because they have difficulties here and there, but most of the time they really gelled very well. Their synastry is good, and lots of planets are agreeing with each other. So basically Karrueche and Chris Brown, I would say, had a really good relationship. Her Venus goes into his 12th house, where of course it's meeting with his Chiron and Mars, right? So for this part is not necessarily positive, because remember, every time when there's Venus and Mars, yes, there's sexual attraction, yes, there's the spark, right? But with time, the Mars partner gets irritated, and all the Martian qualities, they tend to come out and hurt the Venus, right, partner, right? So it could be maybe how they speak, and here, because it's in Gemini, it was a verbal, harshness, verbal hurting, words that were just so hurtful to Karrueche, right? And again, everything is alleged, from the get-go until the end of the video, because, synastry, astrology. But anyway, so that is that. So, started good, but as the time goes, verbal aggression, verbal, ouch, verbal hurting, going towards her. And when I look at, her Venus also, I also see that is opposite his Sun, his Saturn and Neptune. I always enjoy, connections of Saturn and Venus when it comes to, if I can't get a conjunction, I will settle for an opposition, Of course, I enjoy the trines and the sextiles so much, right? Because but the thing is with trine and sextile, it's like they give a whole lot of support, but sometimes it could be felt on a lighter level, like on a friendship level, or somebody just helping you to push your projects and stuff like that. But it doesn't necessarily feel like that heavy commitment type of a vibe, right? It's just like I'm supporting you here and there and stuff like that, right? But with the opposition, this one, it's not going to be easy. You're going to need to put a whole lot of work, definitely a whole lot of work. Without the work, nothing will come into fruition. And most of the time, as I always advise my clients, and I say it here as well, when it comes to an opposition, the way to deal with it is literally to find a third activity, third partner, something in common to do, because you will never change your stances. If one is in Aries, the other one will always be in Libra, and therefore your stances will never change. But you would always want to go and achieve the same goal, so to speak, right? So the best way is to find something in common or someone in common. So depending on the houses, look at the houses and see who to talk to or what to do, what projects to do together and stuff like that. And also look at the signs, because it will tell you what type of those projects or what type of a person that you should go to. For example, if we're talking about Cancer sign, there's a Cancer sign involved, then it means maybe one of your mothers would be helping you guys or would be able to help you guys meet in the middle ground. So that's the trick that's what I've found to be a solution for the opposition, right? So her Venus opposite is certain, a lot of work there. But also with Neptune now, it means there was there was obviously idealization here, whereby he was idealizing her and her beauty and all of that, right? And at the same time, through his career or his status in the public life, right? That was like melange together, and of course for her it was attractive because this is her Venus, being attracted to his profession, he's certain, right? And all of that, right? And vice versa, of course, he's because of his status, because of his profession, he chose her because of her beauty, because of her sensuality, because of how she appeared, and maybe what she had in terms of finances, because Venus is also finances, and all of those things that Venus represents. So never think it's like a one-way street. No. When it comes to the opposition, both partners are what's the word? Forgot. Contributing, right, to the scenario. I have his Venus conjunct with her Jupiter. Of course, when I see Venus conjunct with Jupiter, I just tell myself that, okay, this relationship would not give a marriage, and if the people would choose to marry, they would quickly dissolve the marriage, because guys, I always tell you, Venus and Jupiter, it gives the need to literally jump out and explore. There is no feeling of being committed to the love, to the unionship, right? The Jupiterian energy, it just wants to be free the love to feel free, so to speak, right? But with them now, there's her moon here and her sun, with her Mercury opposite to his fifth house. And of course, we're seeing that, she had hopes to mother, some or a baby with him, or his child, to have his child. And maybe, or she even mothered a baby by him. And and of course she did play a stepmom to his daughter, right? So even if she didn't fall pregnant herself, but she did play the stepmom to the daughter royalty, right? Because moon with fifth house or moon with Venus always gives that vibe of wanting to nurture someone, or being drawn to people who have kids, and you automatically become part of that nurturing system, right? And they have a beautiful sextile of their Venuses. Again, a sextile is there to support. A sextile, it shows there's a level of friendship in the relationship. It's not only intimacy, but they are supporting each other as friends. They see each other as friends. The affection is easy to give, and get, right? So again, but on a lighter note, it's not like the Scorpio type of a vibe, obsessions, 8th house. No, it's like easygoing, easy flowing, all right? And I do have his Saturn trine her Venus again, something very nice to have. This shows another commitment towards helping each other in their love, supporting each other, and showing each other affection, and making intentions towards making the relationship positive and good, right? I have her Saturn trine his moon. Another reason for them to have lasted a whole long time, difficult to separate, because every time when you add moon and Saturn together, you're going to have a glue in the relationship. This is what I call it. I call it a glue because it makes it damn difficult to separate, right? So you could try to separate so many times, but it would be difficult. And with a trine, it means that they could be seeing similar visions, working towards the same goal, finding it easy, in terms of emotions to understand each other. However, because Saturn and Moon are naturally, working against each other in terms of their energies. So you'd find that she would have certain rules or certain restrictions that were either through her status or her behavior in their society, like Hollywood or whatever, right? Could be also just strict rules or disciplines that would at some point be irritated by his changes or fluctuations, because men fluctuate, right? In terms of emotions and commitment to that, right? But trine is a good thing. Another good thing that I enjoy seeing from their chart is that their Mars are trine Mars, perfect sexual intimacy, attraction, passion as well. Just same vibes, understanding each other. Ooh la la, yay, So they really got along well together for a whole long time. And of course, except that first part that I talked about, when whereby her Venus is conjunct with his Mars and Chiron, as I said, aggressions, violent disruptions, through communication and behind doors as well, something that would never be discovered because it's in the 12th house. So it remains hidden. It will always remain hidden until maybe if they had to have, a son. Look, it's one of their sons progressing over that 12th house, and maybe at those times then these things would have been revealed, but I didn't check that. I don't want to linger too long in terms of the analysis, right? Now his moon is the one that was struggling, so to speak, right, in terms of showing emotions. So you would have like a tendency to withhold how he felt, or even he was oblivious himself to how he felt. He wouldn't know like how he feels himself. He would be puzzled of his own emotions, right? And when I look at her moon now, and you find that most of the time he ate off her own emotions. So he got a lot of strength in terms of emotional expressions through her own emotions and through her own emotional expressions and stuff like that. So it's something that would have given him support in terms of emotions, but when it comes to him giving to her, then she would just feel like I'm investing so much of my emotion and mental investment in this relationship, and I'm not getting anything. I'm just losing myself here. I'm losing my mind, literally. I'm just losing my mind because of Karrueche, right? So that's another negative. And another negative that I saw is because obviously it's the Venus and the Jupiter part. It's not really great negative. It's just that you just know it's not going to last for a long time, right? Forever. And I do, see that he's certain now is giving a hard aspect to her moon as well, on top of her feeling like she's already losing her mind because of his emotional expressions, right? So now he's certain as well is giving another heavy aspect to her moon, literally driving her into depression, literally driving her into feeling like she's fighting for herself, for her health, for her mental health, for her mental state, right? So you see that a whole lot here, and it is again because of his own expectations, right? Whereby they always asking each other to change something, like, can you stop doing this, can you please stop doing this, you're hurting me, you're hurting how I feel, you're hurting my feelings, can you stop being overreactive, can you stop being over emotional, all of that. So these would, I assume, the type of the communications, also remembering that Mars there with her Venus in the 12th house of Gemini, right? So that's it really. Now let's move on to Miss Rihanna, our girl, right? So we're moving on to our girl, Rihanna and Chris Brown. Let's do this. First of all, their chart is hectic, you guys, like hectic, like hectic, very hectic. And this is why it took a whole long time for them to to be separated as individuals and not being attached to each other, because it is a hectic relationship. I mean, synastry, my gosh, right? And of course, we don't know when actually they started their relationship. Some people say 2008, some people say 2005, all of that. So we don't really know. So I couldn't trace back to when they started the relationship to see what was happening in their charts. But of course, based on my research and how I have proven to you guys that when Venus is going over Venus, or expecting to your partner certain, or they're progressing, all of that, right, the relationship starts. But I can't say for sure because I don't know when it actually started, right? But I do see. Okay, actually, let's get into the basic synastry, right? So, of course, what makes them have the glue between them and that tied them to each other for so long is that his moon is conjunct with her Saturn. Remember the golden rule: moon and Saturn create a glue, right? Such as was the case with him and Karrueche. It's even deeper with Rihanna because it's a conjunction. Now remember, with the conjunction of moon and Saturn, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a happy relationship. It just means that you're gonna be attached to each other for the very longest time. So it could be because of your careers, your profession, or obligations that you have between each other, such as children, or such as contracts that you might have signed, and in their case it was, of course, he was given a probation of 5 years. So in his life he had her name lingering in his life because of the 5-year probation that he had to go through. I mean, even today he is still being dragged, because of what happened between them. So when people talk about Chris Brown, they always refer to Rihanna and what happened between them. So of course it's now that obligation that is always lingering, being attached to his name, or him being attached to her name, vice versa, of course, right? I have his ascendant being impacted by her 5th house so much. And when this happens, it means that they could have had the indication of, or he could have thought of her like she's childish, right? Or could have wanted to have a child with her, right? Whichever way. And in their case, I do see, of course, that she's got a Lilith in her 5th house, meaning that she has either lost, a pregnancy. Of course, we've never heard that, she had a miscarriage, or she terminated a pregnancy. But with Lilith, there's a lingering secret regarding to a child, right? And of course, with them, we don't know that, so maybe it was just a desire to have a child together, because Lilith can also be just a suppressed desire, right? So basically now, when they when that incident happened in 2009, and which separated them, and caused that damage to both of them, it was a very tough day for him in terms of transits, definitely, because remember, he's a Cancer ascendant, and on this day there was the moon transiting over his ascendant on his body. Moon emotions are highly heightened, but at the same time there was also Ketu already transiting over his ascendant, making him literally kind of like a madman, because that's what Ketu does to Cancer ascendants, because it's anemic to the Cancer ascendant. Is very malefic, the Ketu, and Rahu, the nodes, basically, to that Cancer ascendant. So he was already having a tough time that year, but particularly that day the moon joined this whole debacle. So of course moon and Ketu are not going to give good results. So his emotions were highly heightened, kind of confused, kind of angered, feeling disturbed, so to speak, separated from himself. Again, you see like how I spoke about how get to separate you from your body when it is going over you, like I showed you with Mac Miller and Kobe. In their case, get to literally remove them from this earth, like physically. But with him, Chris Brown, this year, the transiting it separated him from himself in terms of, his image, his clean image, his clean, I would say state or status in the public, with the public. His name was removed, like was literally trashed from that day on because of that ghetto, right? And there was a cluster of planets going on in the 7th house that day. So the 7th house is what? The partner, right? So it would have been representing Rihanna at this time. And there was Chiron in his 7th house transiting there, obviously showing that the partner would be hurt, or the partner would hurt him, and both of them got hurt that day. And there was Sun transiting same house, 7th house. There was a Mars. Now guys, every time when Mars and Sun are transiting together, I have shown you so many times, and I also made that video about the most lethal combinations that make spouses delete their spouses from this earth. And I told you guys about the combination of Sun and Mars. And here again, this day, we're having Sun conjunct Mars with Chiron as well, meaning that the partner would be hurt, and the partner would also hurt the ascendant, because remember, in the 7th house is the partner, right? And so we see here also there was Mercury in the same cluster, and obviously Rahu, because his Ketu was on the ascendant, was transiting on the ascendant. The Ketu was on the ascendant, and Rahu by default in the 7th house. Add to this Neptune, like it was just a disastrous day that I wish, or it could have not happened. And I obviously think that they both wish it never happened, right? But it was a tough day, very, very tough day, astrologically, when it comes to him, due to his ascendant and how these things were set up on this day, right? However, I do see that when I look closer now to his Venus, the transiting Venus, that is, it was opposite his natal Lilith. Again guys, Lilith, oh mama, ay. Anytime when there's Lilith and Venus getting into a conjunction, there's definitely a trigger of suppressed desires in terms of love. So meaning that hidden love that is not accepted, like cheating or third partner, all of these types of things coming up into this equation, right? And of course, Rahu being in the 7th house is also highly indicating another third party was triggering this whole debacle on top of the Lilith Venus aspect, right? This is the transiting Venus now. So again, I must remind everyone, everything is alleged here from the get-go, right? But I'm just reading the planetary alignments on this day or this year. My gosh. And now looking closer to our girls' situation, the transiting Venus was conjunct her ascendant, exalted to the highest, right? Because remember, Rihanna is a Pisces ascendant, right? According to the sidereal, because I'm using the sidereal. And she's got naturally her own Venus on her ascendant moon and Rahu, right? Making her the gorgeous person that she is, with that exotic beauty that she has. Like, she's really just gorgeous, right? And now the transiting Venus was conjunct with her natal Venus, right? But remember, it's with what now? Rahu, triggering the Rahu, another third party situation being involved, right? And obviously now being opposite what her natal Ketu, indicating a separation is being triggered compared to the spouse or partner, right? I do have the transiting Ketu now, transiting moon conjunct with her 5th house. Now 5th house is about intimacy, romance, dating, and now Ketu was transiting this house, indicating loss of romance, loss of dating, loss of partner in terms of dating, right? Because remember, the 5th house is representing light relationships, light dating, not necessarily like a serious relationship or a serious partner, right? So meaning that for her, she could have been seeing him like not necessarily a potential to date, but a date, literally, like somebody to have a date with, to have fun with, have romance, light stuff, right? But yeah, Rihanna, remember, has got her own Lilith in the 5th house. So I'm just getting the vibes of Lilith Rahu, literally triggering the whole situation on this day, right? I do have his progressing Venus now conjunct with her natal Mercury, right? Her natal Mercury is basically in his house, also obviously being joined by the whole cluster of planets that were transiting this day, meaning that they had a very, very verbal altercation, which of course would have led to the Mars being activated in terms of heating, in terms of physical. Because remember, guys, Mars in Capricorn is exalted, but when it's exalted, it becomes dangerous because this is not its house, this is not its original sign, so it becomes frustrated here, and it shows that frustration through physical altercation. This is why yesterday I told you guys that when Mars and Saturn get together, there will be a physical altercation. But even with the signs, now those things become active as well, right? Obviously, his progressing Venus, who was also in his 7th house, with that cluster of planets, and opposite his ascendant, just a whole mess. And now his progressing Venus conjunct with the transiting Rahu, again Rahu effect, third party. Somebody is having a third party here. There's a third party that's triggering this situation according to the planets. I do have her progressing Venus opposite, her Ketu, and conjunct obviously her Rahu, Mars, and that situation, like the transiting, that is, right? So of course, progressing Venus opposite Ketu, and conjunct the cluster of planets of that day. Gosh, with that Mars, remember, Mars and Venus also become very nice and spicy in like when it starts, but as the time goes, the Mars energy comes and becomes Martian, right? I do have her transiting Venus opposite his Lilith, like I said. So these things were really, really difficult for them on this day. But now let's fast forward to 2012, because in 2012 they rekindled their love or their relationship. So, but what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing something like a professional agreement, like something to save, his profession, to be specific, because it's his profession here that is highly affected by the progressing Venuses. So I do have his progressing Venus conjunct with her Jupiter, because Jupiter, remember, is her ascended Lord and is focusing on his 10th house of profession and public image. So it would have been something like, okay, let's get back together so that you can clean up your image and your profession can continue, something like this, right? I also have obviously his progressing Venus at this time being conjunct with his own Venus, because he's got his own Venus in the 10th house, right? And with his sun and moon. So definitely, his progressing Venus was kind of like, helping him to clean up his image, to clean up, the professional front, and to help his profession get back into track and into a good book with the public, right? And being conjunct with his natal Venus, like I told you guys, every time when this happens, of progressing Venus, not transiting Venus, progressing Venus being attached to your natal Venus, something great will happen to you. You're gonna find love. If you're already in love, you already have built up, then that time will be very nice. You're gonna want to express yourself emotionally and all of that. And for him, Rihanna came back to him at this time. I do have her progressing Venus conjunct with her own sun at this time, right? Meaning that, of course, her own image, her own ego at this time was also being, affected. At the same time, her progressing Venus is with his Rahu, right? So meaning that it was not something to last, right? Because remember, progressing Venus over Rahu, it means you're gonna meet someone new, or you're gonna fall in love, but it's not going to last. I think I wrote a comment answering to one of the love lovers questions, but this is what exactly happened. So in 2012, her progressing Venus was attached with his Rahu, and as you guys know, of course, it did not last, right? So these things, they just keep getting proven, and I'm so happy you guys can see that the techniques really work, right? So I do have her progressing Venus opposite, he's oppositing the transiting Saturn, actually, right? Certain work, right? So of course, commitment, is gonna be triggered, but because it's a transiting Saturn, so it means it's not gonna last for a long time. And it was transiting her own 6th house of work, of all of that, so it was karmic situation regarding to work. So this is why I am tilting towards believing that it was related to his profession. And of course, progressing Venus going over Jupiter is obviously indicating it's not gonna last. Like, guys, like I told you before, oh my gosh, every time Venus and Jupiter, it gives the need to have freedom, to have some space to explore other things, other people, other activities, and all of that, right? Always, without fail. And of course, in 2013, it was announced that they separated. And at this time, her progressing Venus was conjunct with her natal Venus, which is indicating that she could have, found somebody new that she had an interest in. And because remember that Venus is also conjunct with her ascendant. But at this time, it was opposite. He's Lilith, right? So again, telling me somebody else came into the picture because of Lilith, but at the same time, it was somebody that she was interested in or she really liked, right? Due to her progressing Venus being with her natal Venus at that time. At this time, his Venus had progressed from being conjunct with her Jupiter to being conjunct with his own Jupiter, again enforcing that need to have a separation, to explore other people, other things, and different avenues, right? His progressing Venus also was conjunct at this time with his Mercury. So, and also her Chiron, goodness. So her Chiron and her fortune, again, Chiron, some wounding, some pain there through that separation is showing, is evident through the Chiron at this time. So basically, that's the synastry of our girl Rihanna, Miss Riri, right? With Chris Breezy, the best performer after Michael Jackson, right? So, and of course, the lovely, beautiful Karrueche as well, as we started the synastry. Otherwise, guys, thanks. I'll catch you on the next one. Happy into it. Ciao, ciao.